up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Our topic this morning that we are studying is a prodigal leaves. So we start in the book of Joshua chapter 24 and verse 15. Joshua chapter 24 and verse 15. So Joshua says, "And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell." And then you know the rest of that, and you see it all the time. It says, "But as for me and my house, what will happen? We will serve the Lord. As me and my house, we will serve the Lord." There are a couple of things that I like to quickly highlight there. One, Joshua, as he's making this declaration, we oftentimes zero in on that last part, just the ending, that as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And as Christians, and we make that, it's almost like a mantra that we have. And that we seek to establish our homes, and we want our homes then to represent what God would have them to be. And so that becomes a rallying cry, a hallmark of what our homes are, that it was, for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And so we make it very clear then that we want our homes, which they should be, places that we want to represent the things of God, the things of eternity. We want our homes to be able to emulate that, to capture that, to be the very essence and the fabric of that. And to bolster that, certainly we use Joshua chapter 24 and verse 15 to say, well, this is what Joshua had, so no less shall it be in my house. So it's me and my house, then we are going to serve the Lord. Question then that as we look at that and contemplate it, that I put forth is, well, how will everyone in Joshua's house serve the Lord? Meaning, is this going to be something that would be done by mandate? That Joshua will mandate that everybody's going to serve God that is in the house. And if so, then how will that carry out? And it may look a little differently when you contemplate or consider our homes individually and our homes collectively. Does that then mean that because we're going to serve the Lord, and that's what my intent is as the father or the mother or the person that is responsible for this home, then am I going to force you to, say, be present when there is family worship? When you don't want to be present, well, I force you to be able to be there, because that's the rule of my house, that if you are in this house, then when worship is here, then I expect you to be here, and I'm going to mandate that. So I'm going to pull you out. And of course, as children get older, it becomes more challenging in that respect. I think you would probably agree with that. Now, purpose and my objective in sharing, of course, is not to say that anyone is an expert, because none of us are experts. And we've all along the way, we've made countless mistakes, countless blunders. So no one has done it right. No one has figured it out. It's one of those things that you figure out maybe as you go along if you're fortunate enough. And by that meaning, fortunate enough, I think some of that has to do with the willingness to be able to listen, and a willingness to be able to recognize that we don't know it all. Contrary to what we like to think, that even though we have made a few more rotations around the sun, that has given some more experience, but it's still the reality that we don't know it all. In fact, if we probably ask now, how many are still kind of figuring out life right now? You probably would raise your hand and say, I'm figuring it out. But if we went back in retrospect, when you were at 18 and 21, you thought you knew it all. You had everything figured out. Okay, this is it. This is how the world works. This is how it's going to be, and you knew everything. And then a few years later on, you realize, after a few bumps and bruises, that I didn't know it all, but we thought that we had learned it all, we had mastered it. Now, some of us were maybe a little more arrogant than others. Because at younger ages, we thought we knew it all. It's like you can't talk to you know everything. So why even waste my time? And sometimes parents throw up their hands in frustration and say, well, I can't tell you anything, so you just got to figure it out the hard way. The world will have to show you that you're not as smart as you think you are. You don't have everything figured out like that, but I can't tell you that. You won't listen to me. So the world will teach you then. I know that when I was younger, I thought that I knew it all. And I would certainly admit there were some pieces I didn't know, but overall I thought I had it figured out. So if there was 100 things to learn and to know, I didn't think I knew 100, but I probably thought I knew at least maybe 95 of them. So the other 5 were just, minimal or marginal. But then as you get older, you realize that you probably only knew 5 of them, but you didn't know the other 95. And not only did you not know the other 95, you didn't know that 95 other ones existed. So we're brought within this conundrum there that we want to be able to represent. And as Christians, it becomes even more imperative because we are living from experience, and we don't want our children or our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, whatever the case may be, we don't want them to make the same mistakes that we made. Because we thought we knew it all, and then we learned out later we didn't know it all, and we still raise our hands saying we have not figured it out just yet. And the natural response and the tendency is that we want to impart that knowledge that we have to you so that you don't make the same mistakes that we had to make and we had to learn from along the way. We went down the road and we tripped up and we fell into the ditch, and we've learned that it hurts. And I see you walking down the same road that I walked down, and that same ditch is there. It has not been covered, and I'm just yelling and screaming, hey, there's a pothole that is there, and look at the bruise I have on my knee as a result of falling there. You're making the same choices, the same decisions I made. You're going to have the same outcome that I had. And you want to just grab them by the neck and shake it, or just take your brain and put it into their brain so that they'll be able to know and they can learn. But it just doesn't work out that way. It doesn't work that way. And then we have the other layer that is added to it, of course, when we consider the words of Joshua, that then we want our family to be able to serve God because that will be the savior to keep them from knowing the same heartache and the same mistakes that we made. So the question again, fundamentally, back to that is, well, Joshua is saying this by mandate, or is he saying this by choice? And I think it's important to figure out how we land on these first couple of verses, because that's going to set the stage for everything else we discuss today and everything we discuss hereafter, because I will not finish everything today. I know we're going to at least be like twice, maybe 3 times, but it's going to set the stage going forward. So we have to land on something here and understand, is he talking about mandate? I'm going to mandate that everyone in this house serves God. Or is he talking about something different, maybe a different perspective? That he is, if you please, surveyed and take an inventory, and he knows what people will do and what they will not do. Not from a prophetic sense, but from the choices that they have made. And is he merely giving voice to what they have said? I would submit that he is not mandating that everyone in the house is going to serve God, because you can't make people serve Christ. It's hard to make people do things. You can't even force someone to eat something that they don't like. When pets get sick and you have to give them medicine, you try to hold them down, and when you hold them down, their instinct is to do what? They're trying to fight, and you like, I bought you out of the shelter, and I took you from a babe, and so the dog and cat, they don't care about that. All they know is that you're holding them down against their will, and then you're trying to force open their mouth with a syringe or some device to be able to deliver the medicine. And I've not tasted the medicine, but it probably doesn't taste good. And you're just trying to force it down them because you know that the medicine is going to do them good. It's going to help them to be able to get better, whatever it is you're trying to give. And even with a human being, you know that can be challenging as well. You just can't force them down and make them swallow it and so forth, because they can turn in their head every which way but the right way, and they're not opening their mouth, they're not cooperating. And you are saying that, look, why don't you get it? The medicine is to make you better. I'm not trying to hurt you, I'm trying to make you better. I'm trying to help you in the process, but they are not interested. And so you can't mandate it, you can't force it. And so Joshua is looking, saying, and I'm not saying don't have religious principles in your home. I'm not saying that. That's not the point. So please do not take that as a takeaway. The thing I want you to really to grasp hold of is that he is not mandating that I am arbitrarily making everybody serve God. Rather, he's making the declaration that in this house, everyone that is here has made a decision individually. Thus, collectively, I'm speaking forth, saying that I don't know, because the context again, he says, listen, in the gods that were on the other side of the flood, some are serving them. I don't know what everybody else is going to do because I can't speak for everyone else. But I can certainly speak and say that as for me and my house, like I've made this decision, and my household has also made the same decision that we are going to serve the Lord. So it's again, not mandate, but one by choice is what he is bringing forth. Now, the second text that we'll examine is Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6. And this one is a little challenging for us because this is a text that I would venture to say, without any scientific data, that virtually 97, 98, 99% of Christians, we claim this text. We claim this text because it gives us hope and consolation. And the text, as you know what it says, to train up a child in the way he should go. And finish the rest for me. And when he is old, he will not do what? Depart from it. And so how many have taken this text in and said, listen, I did my best to train my child as best as I could, and they've chosen a different pathway. They're walking in a different pathway. But make no mistake about it, the promise is that if you train them, then they're going to come back to God. As I said before, without any scientific data, I would think that probably 97 to 99% of Christians take this text and they claim it as such. God, I trained this child up to love you, to serve you, to honor you, to obey you. And right now, they're not choosing that pathway, but I claim the text, this promise, it says that when they're old, then they will not depart from it. So even though they've departed, they're going to come back. It's going to be like a magnet to be able to draw them back. So it almost appears like this is a promise that is given, that is a guarantee that no matter what happens, that child, those children, will come back. So, question that I have, is that what we understand for the text to say? This is a promise then that is given. Now you think about that for a moment, and in the Hebrew, the phrase that we read in English in the way he should go, it reads literally according to the mouth of his way. Or according to his way. So if I were to substitute those and read them back to you in English, we would say then, train up a child according to the mouth of his way. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. Or train up a child according to his way. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. Does that sound different than what we are accustomed to reading it or to applying? Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that sounds totally different than what we are accustomed to reading it, because we're accustomed to reading it a different way. Well, what does it mean? What is the meaning behind that? And what is the impact there? Well, when you consider the text as the psalmist wrote and shared, society is way different from society of today. When the time in which this is written, people were making choices and decisions for their profession, their livelihood. How are they going to go? And contrary to popular opinion and belief, is the fact that this is really dealing with the education of a child for the profession that they would choose in life. So that in the time in which this is written, Proverbs, most followed in the occupation of what their father did. Because typically, again, we didn't have women going out working as such. It would be the household occupation followed down, passed down from generation to generation, like 3 generations, 5 generations, 7 generations, carpenters, 7 generations, farmers, and so forth and so on. But Proverbs is saying that look at the aptitude, the temperament, the skill set of your children, and help them to pick out a suitable occupation according to the mouth of his way, or according to his way, so that the proper or the appropriate education will help to properly prepare a person for their career. Now, know that does not offer any hope then, because I've just said just the opposite of what we've grown up believing and trusting and so forth. Say, you just took away all my hope within a matter of a few minutes. Because I always applied this text to mean this, and what you're saying, if I am to accept this particular view, then that is just the opposite. And so maybe I don't want to accept that particular view because it doesn't coincide with what I like. Those two realities, they don't mix. You know, what I believe and what you are suggesting, those two things collide. And so I don't like that view. So I'm going to keep my previous view because I don't want to change, because if I accept this view, then this is talking about education, it's not talking about salvation. And I don't need it to talk about education because I could care less what children do for a career path. I care more about what they do for heaven's path. And rightly so. But to the Hebrews, it was important to be able to understand the choices what a person would make. And I think to us, we also should understand that as well. Why? Because in all work, there's honor and there's glory that goes to God. And they would understand that in their work, in their labor, that it was to be forth the testament to the praise and to the honor of God. So the indolence was not encouraged, laziness was condemned, but hard working, perseverance, honor and zeal was what was extolled. Now we know this text can't be referring then to the aspect of salvation. Why? Because it would seem to undermine one of the very basic tenets that we understand and we see in life. And that basic tenet we see is that life is made of choices. That life is made of choices. So that a person has to choose, a person has to decide. And so if we make it as such that, well, if we train a child up, then God is going to override those choices to be able to bring it back to fulfill that. We all have choices and decisions that we make, and again, our hearts are burdened because we don't want them to make poor choices, bad decisions. I want them to be able to not be confronted with those things. Notwithstanding, the choices that we have, there is still hope, though. So maybe the text may not mean what we thought it meant, but there is still hope and promise that we find through the scriptures. Now, in Genesis chapter 18 and verse 19, regarding Abraham, it says that I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment. Again, kind of declarative, God saying that I know Abraham, that to him I'm important. He's chosen me as God, and so his household, he's going to honor me and do honor to his children by seeking them to understand and to be raised up, as we would call and say, in the fear and in the admonition of God. Now, the reality of it is that though Abraham did his best and he sought forth to be able to bring forth his children, that still Abraham gave birth and he had Isaac. Well, he didn't have birth, of course, his wife did, but Isaac was brought forth. And then from Isaac we can talk about then Jacob, and then from Jacob we go down to the 12 sons and so forth. And one thing that we look at as well, and we keep in mind, that we see these things being extolled, and we see really the beautiful pieces of it and their allegiance to God, and we sometimes miss over some of the disaffection that was there. Now, as Christians gather, we look, and sometimes when we find then that our children are not walking in the ways of God, it challenges us. Some of the emotions that you may experience may be some of things of guilt. I didn't do enough. I needed to have done more. I should have done this less. And if I could go back and do it over, this is the way I would do it again. I'd redo it. You know, like 1, 2, 3, go, you get a fresh redo. Another piece, of course, is grief, or sorrow, that is not what I intended. Another emotion may be condemnation. I feel condemned. Shame is a big one. I'm ashamed because this is a blight to God's character, and it's a blight upon me because what you do reflects me. And now I'm ashamed because of the choices or the decisions that you have made. And then another one is in turns to anger. How could you do this? You know, what is wrong with you? What are you thinking? What were you thinking? And again, those things are normal. I'm not saying that we're not normal to think those things. I'm just talking about just the reality of those emotions that we process. A different one may be depression. I didn't foresee this, did not contemplate this. And then frustration as well enters in, and certainly we can talk about despair, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And again, I want to go back to where we initially started at the beginning, was that again, God gives choice. Okay, he gives choice. He gives a choice to you, he gives a choice to your offspring, he gives a choice to everybody that walks upon the earth. We all have choice, decisions that we all have to make. And because of that, then that raises the stakes, because we know that we don't always make the best choices, and sometimes we do make better choices, but not always. Okay? But we must then learn from them. So in that, we don't have a exact manual to how to do this thing that we call parenting. We don't have a manual to do many things in life. Now we have the Bible is the book that gives us guidance and counsel in all areas of life. It talks to us about the physical, it talks to us about the mental. We know for sure it talks of us on the spiritual. Yet it is not a, quote, a detailed piece to walk down every little thing that we go through. It gives us these principles that we're able to take, and from the principles to be able to apply it to different things, because it doesn't go down to like the nitty-gritty of certain things. And you say, well, sure it does. It doesn't tell you where you ought to live. It doesn't say, should you buy this, or not buy that. Now it talks about, again, the broad principle of there, so we know that principle. Well, we're not going to buy things that will be able to harm us. We're not going to do things to be able to destroy and to defile God's temple. But besides that, it doesn't say, should you get, say, an Impossible Burger or a Beyond. It doesn't talk about that. It doesn't say where you should live, who you should marry. Yes, it gives you some principles there, but it doesn't say Joe would be better than Bob. Or Susan is, it doesn't touch on any of those things. I know we would like it to sometimes say that. At least we say that we do. But I have a suspicion that if it did tell us those things, then we would have an issue with that. Like, I didn't want that. I wanted this. That wasn't the answer I was looking for. But the Creator has endowed us then with the ability to be able to choose. He's also given us sense, common sense. He's endowed us with the brain. And as parents, we're trying to navigate and to figure all these things out. And so, how then do we lead? Recognizing then that there are choices that each person is able to make, that they must make. And with that, that brings us to two things that we talk of: power versus influence. So think of these as one aspect of power as authority. Not power to force someone to be able to do something, but authority. Authority versus influence, and those two things are different, but they have to be used judiciously. Again, authority is what God has endowed you with. He's given you authority. Influence is something that is different. Influence is something you gain and you build up over time. So, for those who work for someone else and you're switching jobs, you go and you interview and so forth, they bring you on and they say, I'm going to make you the boss of said persons. And when you show up on the first day of the job and you give directives for the employees to follow, do they follow you based off of authority or do they follow you based off of influence? All based on authority. It's all because you are the boss and you said this is how things are. Now they could have been doing something this way and you come in and you say, well, I don't want it to be done this way. I want it to be done this way. And there could be some protests that people bring forth, but ultimately they're going to obey, not based off of influence, but based off of authority. And it doesn't have to do with the fact that they like you or don't like you. It is really at that point based upon the fact that they need that job. That I like working here. So I must obey you, because if I don't obey, then there could be different repercussions. Now, influence is different then. Influence is not authority. Okay? Influence is people are doing things based off of their respect, their esteem, etc. I took this from online and suggest that one of the biggest failures that we make as parents is the confusion or the misuse of authority and influence. Now, we will have to understand how to use them and the appropriate level of them. Now, further, when a child is born, how much influence do you have over that child? Absolutely zero. Everything at that point is 100% authority. But the goal is, by the time that the child goes out from home into the world, that we have how much authority? How much authority do you want to have when your child is grown?
Zero.
I hope zero. Okay? I hope zero. But how much influence do you want to have? It's 100%. So it's a change then, because at one point it's 100% and it's at zero, and then later on you needed to have 100%. You need to have zero. Okay? Because that's going to look pretty strange for a grown child to having the parent tell them what to do and what not to do. We call those in society today helicopter parents. You know, it's like the umbilical cord has been cut like years ago. And they just running around acting like, this grown child is a toddler. So there's a process then, because we talk about being, influenced, because at that particular age, when they, at a certain point then, it's like authority, we can't rely on that. And that's one of the dangers, of course, that many parents, we've made mistakes along the way, that you use, authority, or you use power. And one of the egregious drawbacks, of course, is that some use their physical force to be able to put their foot down. It's like, okay, when you take a 5-year-old that's maybe like this tall, and here you could be 5'8", 5'10", you're towering above that person, and so you're raising your voice, you're hollering at them, you're screaming at them, you're threatening them, and so forth. Well, they don't have any option but to obey you. That's all. They can't fight back. If they were to fight back, it's going to be a one-sided fight, right? And I'm not suggesting beating children in that sense. I'm not suggesting hollering at children. I'm not suggesting all of those different things that I've described. But you can do that and get away with it, because if the child says something, they talk back, then you can be, would you say something? I thought you didn't say anything. And you raise your hand up, threatening and so forth. But then when, that little toddler is now like, looking down over you, and you say something that they don't particularly care for, and they talk back, and you say, what'd you say? You think twice about that now, because you go to raise your hand, and now you're up in age, and that child is it's like conflict is there. So now you can't rely on authority to be able to do anything. You hit, they hit back. You curse them out, they curse you back. You throw something at them, they throw something back, because this is, and it's not just for that one incident either. Don't misunderstand. But it's because of all the years. It's like, okay, you've been cursing me out, been beating me up, and I couldn't do anything, but I had to take it. But guess what? I don't have to take it anymore. And I'm not going to take it anymore. And so now it's like it's on. And so now you're saying, oh, they're being so rebellious against me and so forth. But this is like a build-up over time. I'm not saying that it is right. I'm just telling you what happens. Okay? So it's a build-up over time, because now you have no power. Now you have no authority. You're now 100 pounds heavier than this person, and 5 inches or 5 feet bigger than this person. Now there's no power, and there's no influence. So we don't have anything to be able to rely on. So we rely on what we've been relying on before, just misusing. But when they're grown, then it's 100% influence and zero authority. Now further, you say, well, when does that change, or when should it change? So what is recommended is that somewhere around the age of 9, it's like this shift that begins, like a 50-50 ratio. There's kind of a ratio between authority and between influence, because all along the way you're trying to, you're leaning and building up influence, pouring in so that the influence is there. So again, it's less that is being done during this time period, because sooner or later, there's going to be a push for self-expression. A child's going to say that they want to do something. And sometimes it may be as simple as, I don't want you to dress me anymore. And you can misinterpret that. It's like, oh, but, and you're all torn up. It's like your child is manifesting some autonomy there. I don't want you to dress me. I don't want you to pick out my clothes anymore. They're not saying it necessarily be rude and so forth, but you take it as, what am I going to do? Well, what you're doing is allowing your child to be able to grow and to express and to be able to learn. Now, again, I'm not talking about disrespectfully, so that is not what I am suggesting, but I'm just talking about learning to be able to exercise their voice and being able to find that voice. But we struggle, though, and it's natural. Now, there are four phases of parenting that we generally or typically have. The first one you might rely on is the authoritative parenting style. The second one is the permissive style. And these four phases or four styles, they are based on the work of Diana Bronman, who is a developmental psychologist, and also a couple of researchers at Stanford, Eleanor McCoby and John Martin. Again, she put the first three, they put together the fourth one. The third one is the authoritarian parent. And then the fourth one is the uninvolved parent. So look at those for just a moment, and you don't have to say, but you can look at the pictures and kind of get an idea of what's taking place, and you can kind of decide, well, what's the style of parenting that you have? The authoritative parent is one that is using kind of a mix of authority and influence and being able to listen and dialogue. That authoritarian parent is, because I said so, that's why. And don't you forget, as long as you're underneath my roof, this is the way it is, and so forth. That's that authoritarian parent. Because it's important to obey. It's not diminishing obeying, but that's the authoritarian parent. Then we have the permissive parent, who you can look at the picture, kind of get an idea. It's like, right, anything goes. Don't say anything because you're going to crush little Bobby's spirit. He's a free one. So I'm not going to put any restraints, on Bobby. Don't bother Bobby. My parents gave me rules, and I hated rules. So Bobby can do whatever he wants to do. 2 o'clock in the morning, Bobby's on the street corner because, hey, do whatever. And then there's that uninvolved parent that is really caught up into our own world, and we don't know what's taking place in their world. Now, those different ones. Again, my objective is not to say that we are horrible parents, because you probably already feel like that anyway. Okay? My objective is to say that when we're going to learn a little better, and we're going to strive to do a little better. We all make mistakes along the way, and it is never too late to change. So I'm not trying to point it out to say this is what you should have done. That's not the objective, okay? That ship has sailed a long time ago. All right, but for some, you're still in that process of being able, but we're never too late to change. We're never too late to be able to learn. So we're talking about this, again, for the perspective of being able to learn from, but also, guess what? You will also have the opportunity to influence others. You're going to have grandchildren that you'll be able to influence. You're going to have maybe blessed with great-grandchildren to be able to influence and so forth. So those different things are going to come up and give an opportunity to be able to do so. So what of this style, the permissive parent, we'll start with. Number one is a high responsiveness and low demandingness. And you're going to see this term pop up a lot. So responsiveness is really talking about like the emotional attunement to what's taking place. Demandingness is really in terms of like obeying and so forth. Okay? What from the parent's perspective. Permissive parent communicates openly and usually lets their kids decide for themselves rather than giving them directions. All right, here are the choices. You decide, you figure it out. It typically goes through great lengths to keep their kids happy, sometimes at their own expense. Well, I didn't have that when I was a kid, and I don't want my kids to not have that. Now, that doesn't mean that you may not make sacrifices and so forth, but sometimes we fall into that trap. I didn't get to have that when I was a kid, so I want to make sure that my kids are able to have that. Permissive parents are more likely to take on a friendship role rather than a parenting role with their kids. They prefer to avoid conflict and will often acquiesce to their children's pleas at their first sign of distress. These parents mostly allow their kids to do what they want and offer limited guidance or direction. Number 2, the authoritative parent. It's a high responsiveness and high demandingness. They set clear rules and expectations for their kids while practicing flexibility and understanding. They communicate frequently, they listen to, and they take into consideration their children's thoughts, feelings, and opinions. Like meaning the kids, they're not running the house, but they have a say-so. And I value that say-so. I want to hear what you have to say. And I'm going to take that into consideration. Doesn't mean I'm going to do what you want me to do, but I will at least listen to what you have to say. And we'll talk it out, we'll figure it out, and we'll make some type of decision that we're going to land on. Whereas in the other one, it was pretty much the inmates are running the asylum. But in this particular situation, I'll hear that, and I'll take that into consideration. Allows natural consequences to occur, but uses those opportunities to help their kids reflect and learn. I'm going to let you go out and make that choice, although I don't agree with that choice, but I'm going to let you go ahead and do it. I'm not talking about something that is going to have lingering effects, okay? I'm not talking about lingering effects, but something that you can go out and you can bust your head open and live to tell the tale. Okay, so I'm going to let you do that because you learn best sometimes by being in those situations. I shared before, again, when I was doing Bible studies, on Friday night we had our basketball games, and I was expected to play. I signed up for JV. When I signed up for it, I wasn't thinking about Sabbath and God, any of those things. But we had the game on Friday evening, and leading up to it, you know how you want to have a conversation, but you're afraid to have the conversation. And so I knew probably a couple of weeks prior that I didn't want to play on Friday night. And I had the time to tell the coach beforehand, but I kept saying, I'll do it tomorrow. No, I'll do it tomorrow. At the end of practice, and you know how that goes. Tomorrow never comes. It's always the next day after. And so it was like I pushed on, and then got to a certain point that it's like a couple of days before. And I remember asking my mother about the situation, and basically she said, well, you decide, you figure it out. Now, that wasn't what I wanted to hear. I wanted her to say, you can't go. Now, I know that some of you would have said, no, you will not go, because Friday night is the Sabbath and so forth and so on. And I don't need a sermon preached, because even though people know generally right from wrong, you don't need a sermon preached. No, do you need a sermon preached when you do wrong? No, okay? I don't need to preach to you. You don't need somebody to come up and to start telling you 15 Bible texts. You could probably tell them 18 Bible texts. But she didn't say you can't go. And I wanted her to say you couldn't go. Because then I would have been able to say, my mom said I can't go. And, put it on somebody else. But I had to decide. And so you know what? That Friday came, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I hadn't told them I wasn't going to come. So Friday evening came, I went to the game. No, I played in the game. And I don't miss the moral of the story, okay? Moral of the story is not encouraging you to do wrong. The moral of the story is you have to decide for yourself. Now, she told me I couldn't go. And again, every situation is different. But if she said you can't go, I probably would have been in the room seething. I wanted her to say I couldn't go, but sometimes you want people to like say no, and then you're mad at the outcome. And sometimes we ask people for their opinion, and they tell us this the opposite, and then we want to argue them down. Now, what looks better, this one or this one? I think that one looks better. Well, and then you argue them down for not choosing that one. Well, you asked me, right? So I would have probably been stewing that I couldn't go. But I went, and while I was there, though, I felt, what are you here for? I didn't need a sermon being preached to me and so forth. The Holy Spirit was working upon my mind. It hard knew the choice and the action I was making when right. And so then on the next day of practice, on that Monday, I told the coach, hey, I can't play on Friday nights because I keep the Sabbath. So, it worked out, but it was my choice, my decision to be able to make. And so it was easier for me to stand off of my choice, my decision, than off of her choice, her decision. And authoritative parents, again, can learn, I'm going to let you make that choice, even though that wouldn't be the choice I would make, but you can go ahead and decide on that. Now, what does it do? Now, you're not exercising quote-unquote authority. You're letting them to be able to learn, and then that's going to come back and to help to pay some influence. That, all right, you know what? I made that choice, and that was a poor choice, and this is why. Now, quickly, like I said, I get to cover the other two. Authoritative parents are nurturing, supportive, and often in tune with their children's needs. They guide their children through open and honest discussions to teach values and reasoning. Kids who have authoritative parents tend to be self-disciplined and can think for themselves. Now, that's certainly a little different from the authoritarian parent, because we want them to be able to think for themselves, to reason for themselves, because we won't always be around. And they don't want you always to be around. And you shouldn't want to always be around. Like, I want you to go like free, like a little bird. Go spread your wings. And let me see how God is going to use you to bless the world. You can't always be underneath me. You need to go out into experience. Now, again, I know that may sound harsh, but don't take it as being harsh. Take it as a reality. Go out. I want you to be able to, but I want to equip you with as much as you have so that you will be able to make the right choices and the right decisions. And there's going to be some pushback from that, but you're learning, of course, to exercise authority and influence. So quickly, the neglectful parent. So low responsiveness, low demandingness. Okay, just not paying attention to anything. Low demandingness, no expectations, or low expectations. Lets their kids mostly fend for themselves, perhaps because they are indifferent to their needs or are uninvolved or overwhelmed with other things. Offers little nurture, guidance, and attention. You figure it out. And a child left to their own devisings will inevitably bring pain to a parent. That's just human nature. It's not because they're, quote, bad. It's just like you and I, they're trying to figure it out. Kids are going to do something. They will do things that are going to bring you a whole lot of joy, and they're going to do some things that are going to bring you a whole lot of pain. So just accept that. And guess what? You did the same thing to your parents. I did the same thing. Some things bring a whole lot of joy, some things that you're like, hey, I want to put this on the front page of the newspaper. Well, I guess we don't do newspapers too much, so let me change it. Front page of Twitter, right? And there's some things you want to bury like beneath the bottom of the earth. But we go through that, and there are some things that children do that are not necessarily rebellious. It's just trying to figure things out, and they don't have a reason for it. Like no explanation. To you is dumb and stupid. You can't figure out what would possess you to do something so idiotic as this? To them, I wonder what would happen if I took the razor and just shaved off the top of my head if I could do something. And you're walking around like Mr. T for what? To you, it was clear you shouldn't do it. They're sticking a metal object into the electric outlet to see what would happen. They're not trying to harm themselves. I just wonder what would happen. I plugged the vacuum in it, and the vacuum makes this. So I wonder what would happen if you did this. They often struggle with their own self-esteem issues and have a hard time forming close relationships, sometimes referred to as uninvolved parents. The style is exemplified by an overall sense of indifference. Neglectful parents have limited engagement with their children and rarely implement rules. They can also be seen as cold and uncaring, but not always intentionally, as they are often struggling with their own issues. So I have my own things that I'm taking care of. I can't look at them. So we have to find a way to be able to move beyond, because yes, we do have issues. Yes, we have other things, having problems on the job, having problems in marriage, having problems over here. This person is infirm. This person has this going on. But although all those things are taking place, we still have to find a way of being able to navigate so that they still know and are received with the attention that is needed. The last one is the authoritarian parent. It's high demand and low responsiveness, enforces strict rules with little consideration of their kids' feelings or social, emotional, and behavioral needs. Often says, because I said so. When the kid questions the reasons behind the rule or consequences. May I add that just because a person asks a question, it doesn't always mean that they're trying to be rebellious. Sometimes, I'm trying to understand why. What is the reason behind this? And if our default again is just, well, because I'm your mama, I'm your daddy, and because I said so, boy, don't you ask me any more questions, then in the moment, that addresses the issue, but it sets it up for later on when bigger issues come up. I want you to be able to know that you can always come and talk to me. And so if you're one of those folks that you struggle with your emotions in terms of anger, that you go from I'm cool as a pancake to I'm hotter than the firecracker on the 4th of July in just a matter of seconds, this is a tough one, right? Because it's like you may just, the expression is you have to bite your tongue. So your tongue might be well nigh severed, okay? But you're going to have to learn, and we have to learn literally you can't speak and say the first thing that comes to mind. Because again, they're going to do some stuff that the natural instinct, the immediate instinct is to take your hand and knock it upside their head. Because maybe, we learned that you're knocking some sense into them. So that was the idea, I knock some sense into you. Now, I don't suggest that that was what I had seen and observed people do that, okay? And I get it, I understand it. But when those questions come up, they will sometimes sound like challenging authority. And sometimes it could be challenging authority. But it's how you choose to respond in those moments, again, that set up the stage. So in overreacting in small things, so imagine if you got me a brand new outfit, right? And I was out playing, you said, when you come home, how many of you were growing up, you had your school clothes and your play clothes? You had you kept your school, well, those who didn't, you all were blessed. If you didn't raise your hand and say, you had school clothes and play clothes, and I mean, you must have had it going on. So, hey, I could only envy you. When you had your school clothes, the whole idea was you had to keep those are next to church clothes, right? You couldn't be on the ground with them. You just kept walk circumspect, upright. It's no dirt, no dust. Those had to last. Play clothes are different though. Right? You could roughhouse and do whatever. But imagine you had your brand new school clothes and you came back in and you messed them up. And again, I know sometimes, hey, money is hard to come by. I totally get it, understand that. But your parent lays you out for 10 minutes because you were on the playground and you ran, you tripped, and now it's like a hole there, and they just keep going on and on and on and on and on. What were you thinking? Why were you out playing? It's like, well, I'm out playing because it's playtime. Now, they can't say that, but that's what they're thinking. Why'd you dive for the ball? Well, that's part of the game. We're playing, right? But they go on and on and on. So then you take that and you multiply it into something that's bigger, right? A bigger issue. Do you think they're going to come and sit back and try to go over that now? No, you just berated me for 15 minutes over a little spot. And some of them, a little bit of tide, it can take out. Or, the jeans are not going to last forever. But when a bigger issue comes, I'm less inclined to go. Why? Because I went, and this was an item, and I got grounded for like 4 weeks because I got a hole in my pants. There's no way on earth I'm going to go back and tell something that is bigger. It's okay. So we might struggle with those issues, but in struggling with them, though, to be able to learn, okay, I want to try to do better. Not going to always get it right, but I'm going to try to do better. I'm going to bite my tongue and say a prayer. This rigid parenting style uses stern discipline, often justified as tough love. In an attempt to be in full control, authoritarian parents often talk to their children without wanting input or feedback. May sound like this. What on earth were you thinking? And the child then begins to say what they were thinking. Well, shut up. I don't want to hear you talk. Okay, well, you just asked me, what was I thinking? I'm telling you now what I was thinking, and now you tell me just the opposite. So with those, in conclusion, because I have to stop. In summary, let me just share this one with you quickly. The permissive parent is saying essentially whatever you want. The uninvolved is, I really don't care. The authoritarian is because I said so, and the authoritative is, let's discuss this. Those parenting styles, of course, are going to have an impact in the development in 7 different ways. There's an emotional impact that will be held, of course, the cognitive development, the social development, moral and behavior development, cultural development, physical health, and the impact on mental health. And again, I want to stress that no one is going to get it right. Every kid will make mistakes. But what you need to do, what I would need to do, is to be able to form such a bond and connection that when your children, when they make mistakes, that they will always know whatever mistake or choice or decision that you make, I will always love you unconditionally, and I will be here to support you. That doesn't mean I need to countenance what you've done wrong. Those words didn't come out of my lips, but I've said that unconditionally, I will always be there. Why? Because you are seeking to mirror, I am seeking to mirror how God is. No matter what choices that we make, God will always be for us unconditionally to love us. So it's nothing that we can do to make him love us more. Your children can be just as obedient and do all the right things. Don't let that be, okay, I'm going to love you more because you do all the right things. And if you don't do, quote, all the right things, we're going to love you less. Again, that's not the picture that our Father paints toward us. The sun's going to come on the just. The sun's going to come on the unjust. So you say, well, you've taken away the hope that we had from Proverbs. Well, I want to at least give something back, okay? In Isaiah chapter 49 and verse 16, we read that, behold, I have graven you upon the palms of my hands. Thy walls are continually before me. God is going to respect the choices and the decisions that each and every one makes. And as he respects the choices and the decisions that each one makes, we know that sometimes the wrong choices or wrong decisions are made by them. Sometimes the wrong choices or wrong decisions are made by us. His promise, though, is that our names are graven upon the palm of his hand. He loves our children way more than you could ever love your child. As an earthly parent would do good things for their earthly children, so much more above that will God do amazing things for your children. He understands the burdens that you carry. Your desire to want to be able to see them saved. He understands the frustrations that are there, the anger and the disappointment. Again, none of us do it right. We all mess up, we all make mistakes, and so too do they. But that is why something called grace comes in. That's why something of mercy comes in. That's why something of forgiveness comes in. That's why something of love and charity come in to be able to prepare the way. And in it we remember then that I have not forgotten them. God has not forgotten them. They are graven upon his hands. And he will do everything possible that they may be able to be saved in his eternal kingdom. And so you can claim that promise and be able to rest assured in that, and to be able to still, in the midst of chaos, to be able to have peace. Because you don't have to figure it out. Not your responsibility. It's not your job to be able to figure it out. You're not the Savior. Christ is. They will come to their own reckoning one day on their own. And it may take months, it may take weeks, it may take years. We don't know. And the reality of it is we also have to consider the other piece is they may never come to that understanding. Now, that's not something that we want to think about, and we certainly don't want that to be the prospect. But again, with that choice that is there, but you will still be able to know that I know that I've tried my best, though I've failed, but I know and trust in God who has never failed. Because we can look back and we see, okay, I could have done this better, but God doesn't need to look back and see, I could have done this better, or should have done this, or should have, there's no mistakes with God. Trust your children then to God. There are no mistakes with him. He is able to work exceedingly abundantly, however we may ask or think, and certainly never lose faith, though. You never lose faith, never lose confidence, not based on what you see, because that's not what faith is. Faith is not what you see. Faith is what you can't see. So I don't see how this is going to work out, but I'm going to trust God that it will work out. And I'm going to believe him that he will work it out, because he has a personal and a vested interest in them, even more so than I do. Father in heaven, for the moments that we had together again today, we want to thank you, and we recognize that as parents that we don't have it all, we don't know and understand. So we just want to just acknowledge that and to put that before you, and to pray that where all the gaps have been, that you would seek to somehow overrule those things with our best intentions, interspersed with our messed up ways of doing things. We just pray that you would just perform the miracle of grace in our behalf. It's our desire. We want to see us saved in your kingdom. We want to see our children and our family members saved in your kingdom. And you gave us all choice, and we're going to honor that choice that you've given to us, and to do what we can to seek to use influence when appropriate, seek to use authority when appropriate, but under the guise and of all of those things, to be able to use God-fearing love and charity, and knowing that you're able to work to counteract all of the negative things and the worldly influences that are all around. And so you died for our children. They're but yours by creation and by redemption. We just want to give them to you again. No matter where they are, no matter what choices they're making, no matter what decisions, and what seems as though there is no possible good outcome, we choose not to focus in on what we see. We choose to believe by faith that because you've graven them upon the palms of your hand, because you sent your son to die for them, that you will continue to draw them to yourself. And so we pray, Lord, that whatever means are necessary, that they might be saved in your eternal kingdom. They might come to know you, who is Christ and God everlasting forevermore. Be with us again, I pray. Bless and keep us. In Jesus' name, amen.